Hello there, my fellow myth and fantasy fans. My name is Tanner, and I'd like to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. Just so we're aware, my dad and his girlfriend are doing some renovations over in the other room. So if you hear any weird noises in the background, it's probably them. Anyway, for this week's video, I figured I would tell you guys another one of my favorite myths. However, for quite a while, I wasn't exactly sure which myth I would tell you. In the end, I decided I was going to tell you guys the story of one of my favorite mythological characters, that being Anansi, the African spider trickster and god of stories and wisdom. Now, many of the folk tales surrounding Anansi portray him as a trickster, akin to, say, Loki, for example. And they usually go along the lines of Anansi messes with someone and yet evades the consequences through sheer cunning alone, if that makes sense. However, one of the first ever stories about Anansi is actually how he became the god of stories in the first place. This video will be that story. Now, like with all of my other myth and legend videos on this channel, link to the playlist up in the cards and in the description down below, I will be keeping this version of the story as close to the original as possible, but sprinkling in some creative liberties when and where I think it's needed. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe down below because that always helps. And without further ado, here is the tale of Anansi winning stories. Long, long ago, when the world was still fairly new, Anansi the spider was bored. He laid back in his web and he thought, "Why am I so bored?" He then came to the conclusion that the reason he was so bored was because there were no stories. Now, the reason there were no stories, at least none that were available to Anansi, was because his father, Nyame, god of the sky, was hoarding all the stories and not sharing them with everyone else. Anansi decided to ask Nyame if he could somehow obtain the stories from him. Anansi spun himself a long silken rope and climbed up it to Nyame's palace in the sky. He made his way to the throne room where Nyame was and knelt down on all four legs in front of the throne, head bowed, all four hands clasped in front of him, and waited for Nyame to address him. "Anansi, my son," Nyame said when he noticed Anansi there. "What a pleasant surprise! What brings you here to the palace?" "Father," Anansi said, "I come here to ask you for ownership of all the world's stories, so other people may enjoy them." Nyame was immediately suspicious, but then he took a look at Anansi's face. Anansi's eyes, all eight of them, were open as wide as they could go, and his bottom lip was quivering in a pout. Nyame smiled, for he could never resist Anansi's cute spider face. "Oh, very well," Nyame said. "I will give you the stories after you finish my test." Anansi groaned. "A test? Can't you just give me the stories?" "No," Nyame said. "Not until you prove yourself by finishing this test." Fine. What will I have to do?" Nyame grinned. "All you have to do is capture the four most dangerous and elusive creatures in the world." He waved his hand, and four small clouds appeared in front of Anansi. "First," Nyame said, and the first cloud changed shape until it appeared to be a branch with a hive hanging from it. "You must capture the Umboro hornets." The second cloud changed until it became a long, twisting creature. Second, you must capture Onini the python. The third cloud grew 4 legs and a tail, and it reared up and roared. Third, you must capture for me Osebo, the leopard. The fourth cloud then changed, appearing vaguely human but with 4 wings growing from its back. Finally, you must capture Moatia, the invisible fairy. Anansi accepted the challenge and went straight to work. He knew that he was going to have to be clever if he was to pass this test. He first found the tree that the Umboro hornets kept their hive, and he brought with him 2 hollow gourds, one that was full of water and another that was empty. He slowly approached the hive and poured half the water in the gourd over the entrance, and the other half he poured on himself. As the hornets swarmed angrily out of their soaked hive, they only saw Anansi, dripping wet. "Oh no!" Anansi said. It seems to be raining out. Quick, get into this gourd I hollowed out for you before you get washed away." The hornets all thought that this was fairly reasonable, so they all swarmed out of their hive and into the hollow gourd. Anansi then quickly plugged the entrance so they couldn't get out. 1 task down, 3 to go. Anansi then sought out Onini, the python, who lived just a few burrows down from Anansi's own home. Anansi took with him a large stick and laid it outside the entrance to Onini's home. He then started pacing back and forth, arguing to himself. Onini poked his head out of his burrow where he was taking a nap and saw Anansi pacing in front of his stick and muttering. "Anansi?" Onini hissed inquisitively. "Why are you pacing in front of that stick?" Anansi looked over and saw Onini peering at him. "Oh, hello, Onini. Well, I was arguing with my wife earlier today, you see. She says you're obviously much shorter than this branch right here, and at first I disagreed with her, but now I'm not so sure." His voice trailed away, as if deep in thought. Anansi knew that Onini's flaw was his pride, and that he would never be able to resist a challenge. "Oh, but of course I'm longer," Onini said indignantly. "And we shall settle this once and for all." He slithered over to the stick and laid down next to it, stretching himself as much as he could. Wait, Anansi said. Every time you move your head, the tip of your tail slips past the end of the stick. Perhaps I could tie your tail to the end of the stick so, you won't move around as much." Onini, not exactly the brightest, agreed, allowing Anansi to tie a silken thread to his tail. Every time he stretched a little bit further, Anansi would tie a silken thread around him so he couldn't slide back. Before he knew it, Onini was well and truly stuck. 2 tasks down, 2 to go. For the third task, Anansi dug a large pit into the jungle path and covered it in leaves and twigs. He then climbed a tree out of the way and waited for Osebo, the leopard, to walk into his trap. He didn't have very long to wait before he heard a loud "Row!" and then a soft thump. He walked over and saw Osebo pacing around the bottom of the pit in frustration. "Hey, Osebo!" Anansi called down, and the leopard looked up towards him. "You need me to lend you a hand, or four?" No, Anansi, I just want you to sit there looking pretty, Osebo growled. Are you sure? Get me out of here! Anansi then tied a silken thread to a small flexible sapling and lowered the other end down to Osebo. Osebo tried to climb up the rope, but as it turns out, the thread was rather sticky. Every time Osebo tried to loosen the thread, or to keep it from sticking to him, the more tangled he got. Eventually, he was so tangled he could not move. 3 tasks down, 1 to go. Finally, in order to capture Moatia, Anansi asked his wife to make her famous sweet yam paste, for he knew that Moatia had a weakness for sweet yam paste. He then crafted a small wooden doll and covered it with sticky tree sap. He sat the wooden doll out in the open, near where the fairies usually played, and placed a bowl of the sweet yam paste onto its lap. He then spun a thread and stuck one end onto the doll's head and held the other in his hand. He hid behind a tree and waited for Moatia to approach. Then he saw her, a glimmering winged figure appearing in front of the doll. Um, excuse me, he heard Moatia say, in a voice not unlike the tinkling of a bell. But, may I please have some of your delicious yam paste? Anansi tugged on the end of the thread, making the doll nod its head yes. Moatia then set to work, eating as much of the yam paste as she could. When she had her fill, she turned to the doll. Thank you for sharing your yam paste with me. The doll, being a doll, didn't answer. Moatia paused, thinking that the doll didn't hear her. Um, I said thank you, she said. The doll still refused to answer. Moatia grew frustrated, as Anansi knew she would, for other than a weakness for yam paste, Moatia's other flaw was a very quick temper. She drew back her fist and shouted, I said thank you! She punched the doll, which, as it was covered in sticky sap, caused her fist to become quite stuck. She punched with her other fist, which, again, promptly got stuck. She then tried kicking the doll, which got her feet stuck. Eventually, she was just completely and utterly stuck. 4 tasks down, 0 to go. Anansi brought his 4 captives to his father's palace. When Yama saw that Anansi had passed the test, he had no choice but to uphold his end of the bargain. From that day forward, Anansi became the god of stories, and he and his wife and their descendants shared the stories with everyone. In fact, they're probably still trying to share them with us to this day. Now, Anansi has many other stories about him and his exploits, but those stories are for another time. And there we have it. That was the tale of Anansi winning stories. Pretty interesting, huh? If you like this video and you want more, please give this video a like and subscribe down below so you don't miss any new ones. Also, if you have any other ideas for any future videos, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And who knows, it might just happen. Alright, well, that's all the time I have for this video, so I'll see you all next week with a brand new one. See you guys then.